Our plunge pool, a mini pool, has faithfully served us for 3 seasons already, and I hope it will continue to bring us joy for many more hot seasons to come. The uniqueness of this container is that it is 90% made of lightweight Penaplex. Penaplex is an orange foam material. Building the plunge pool is simple, easy, and cheap. In these shots, it's the very first season with the mini plunge pool. Not only can you cool off perfectly, but you can also use the supply of water heated by the sun for watering the garden. With the help of a very inexpensive Ruchik pump, I set up convenient watering for both the garden and the lawn. I was so happy with the plunge pool that I built a path to it the same year, also using 90% Penaplex. The next year, I purchased a stronger submersible pump. With its help, I water the newly built raised warm beds, the sides of which are also made up of 90% Penaplex. Kupol is shown here on the eve of the 3rd season. Right after finishing the construction, I released a video. I did my best to talk about all the stages of this project. If you manage to bend the Penaplex, then consider half the job already done. It's just 3 centimeters thick. After some time, while browsing the internet, I started coming across videos where do-it-yourself enthusiasts were repeating my experience. And they don't always manage to do it as smoothly as I did. Natalia Periverzeva from her namesake channel made an excellent similar plunge tub. The decorative finish is absolutely fantastic. But after watching her video, I realized that in some aspects that were easy for me, she had a hard time. Natalia is a well-known blogger who makes interesting videos, which is how I found out about her difficulties. And how many more home craftsmen are there who don't make videos and could have faced similar difficulties? And we don't know anything about it. Maybe it's all because I'm always in a hurry, and I didn't put enough emphasis on some of the finer points of making it. That's why I want to make it right and urgently publish a video after watching which you'll be able to make these mini pools, even for those who've never held anything heavier than a spoon in their life. So let's go through everything step by step. Hello everyone, this is the Yasha Koshek Songs channel about super cheap innovations. First, I gave the sheets a rough texture using a saw blade detached from its handle. Extruded polystyrene is brittle when bent. If you glue plaster fiberglass mesh to one side using construction adhesive and foam, you can bend it by hand. First, I gradually bend one side, then I gradually bend the other side, and after that, I move on to the middle. After bending the sheet, it's best to keep it fixed in this curved position for about half an hour. The mesh has served its purpose and can be removed, but it's reusable. I don't think my hands are very strong, but last year I bent the foam board with ease. And I'll tell you, you do need to put in some effort. Maybe the desire to escape the heat faster gave me some extra strength. Basically, there's nothing complicated about it. Everything is on the video. I only needed to bend 8 sheets in total. Not a single one broke. I managed to bend the 8th sheet especially skillfully. As you can see, this isn't some video editing trick, and there's nothing deceptive here. Everything is right before your eyes. Only when I was making a garden bench, which was 90% made of extruded polystyrene, there were a couple of mistakes, and the sheets broke twice. But there, I needed tiny radii and curves. Natalia still couldn't bend the foam board. It kept breaking on her. And she was only able to get a round shape by gluing small pieces of foam board together. When I set out to make a round hive log from foam board, I made a simple device out of a pallet. This is a foam board bender. With its help, you can bend foam board to a very small radius. If arm strength is needed, the foam board bender makes this work much easier. It even lets you roll extruded polystyrene foam into a scroll. To finally set the record straight about bending such materials, let's move to the present day. I've heard that many people have had problems bending gray Penaplex Technoplex. Let's check it out now. I'm roughening the test sheet on both sides with a wood saw, just like with the orange one. I'm cutting a piece of strong fiberglass mesh according to the size of the sheet. The second test sample will also be gray, pre-roughened extruded polystyrene foam. I'm using high-quality fiberglass mesh that doesn't fall apart into single threads. I'm making separate strands. Let the adhesive set for a few minutes. Now that it's set, I'm applying the mesh to the first sample. In Natalia's video, it looked like she used too little adhesive foam. I suggest not skimping at first. Use enough adhesive until you've worked with a few sheets or strips. Now, while gluing my second sample, I see the mesh must be glued, not just attached loosely. I'm putting the first sample into the Penaplex bender. The moment of truth. The sheet broke very quickly. It looks like there really can be problems with bending gray FPS. I'll try bending it farther from the edge. From what I can tell, the gray material is stiffer than the orange one. You have to put in more effort. I also don't like the frequent crackling. From time to time, the EPPS cracks. Indeed, there are a few visible cracks, but basically it can actually be bent. It won't bend to a small radius, but for a large one, which is needed for the tub, it's quite possible. The verdict is that the material is conditionally suitable. I'm putting the rough test sample straight into the device. Guys, now that's a different story. It bends just as well as the orange one, and there aren't even any hints of tiny cracks. The verdict is it's suitable for bending at any radius, like the orange one. Since we're on a roll, let's try bending regular white foam as well. I've been meaning to check this. Here's a sheet of facade foam with a density of 25. And this is a sheet with a density of 15, which you can really feel by touch. This is new to me, so I'm using plenty of glue, especially along the short sides. The mesh needs to be glued as well as possible along the edges. That's what my intuition tells me. I'm sure it's possible to come up with an improved foam bender for which you won't need to glue the mesh in advance at all. For most of us, when it comes to small household needs, we only need to bend a small number of sheets, so I don't see any point in bothering to make an advanced device. Gluing the mesh doesn't take much time. Guys, foam with a density of 25 is just awesome. It's a real pleasure to bend it. The thickness of all the test samples is 3 centimeters. It really bends perfectly. But white foam, unlike extruded polystyrene, does not have zero water absorption, so the idea of using it as waterproofing might not work out. But for detailed small architectural forms, it's suitable. The verdict is, it's perfectly suitable. After removing the mesh and bending, you need to remove and straighten the material carefully, and here is the foam with density 15. It bends very easily by feel, easier than everything before, but it doesn't want to stay bent. The verdict is that you can use it in principle, but with caution. Don't rush when peeling off the mesh. The 25 density foam is awesome. I recently met an amazing craftsman and musician, Mikhail. In his videos, he shows that you can make folk musical instruments for children and adults in just a few hours from scraps of foam and leftover wood. Mikhail said that many peoples, like Belarusians, once had various folk violins with different shapes and names, but these are now forgotten. It is mistakenly believed that these folk musical instruments have a primitive sound that cannot be compared to the sound of professional instruments. Not a single orchestra of Belarusian folk instruments plays folk violins. Mikhail is trying to correct this injustice. It turned out that violins made of foam can compete in sound with many classical violins. I'm leaving a link to this remarkable person's channel below the video. Let's go back again to 3 swimming seasons ago. Since I try not to make any mistakes on the first experimental pieces, I don't get lazy and cut off the remaining foam. 8 curved and 4 uncurved sheets. That's all the extruded polystyrene I'll need. When gluing, I try to apply the glue carefully. I put it on one edge, then on the other, and for extra reliability, I add a strip between them. This way, the glue joint ends up being stronger than the material itself. To keep the sheets from shifting, I press them down with a weight. I cut the 4th sheet in half lengthwise. After the glue foam sets, I trim the excess. I made an improvised compass out of a wooden bar. I draw a circle with a radius of 1 meter 50 centimeters. I cut a quarter off one side of the sheet. There are no special details yet, and the video sequence makes everything clear. The main thing is I don't skimp on glue. In some areas, the curved sheets wouldn't stick to the line, so I used self-tapping screws to secure them. The foam sets fast, so I cut it. It was used, but in fact, he was selling what he was inventing. Then I needed a 2-component elastic waterproofing. Its brand is shown in the video. I had some leftovers. Buying this kind on purpose is expensive. It's sold in large quantities, but you only need a little bit. Surely you can find another option. Unlike regular white foam, APPS does not absorb or let water through. That's why the main idea is to use it as the primary waterproofing and only seal the joints that might let water through. After it hardens, this waterproofing remains elastic. I coated the joints both inside and outside. Since the sheets are still handmade and flexible, I hadn't invented the foam board bender yet. The circumference isn't perfectly even. I temporarily glued it while the sheet was loose. A thick layer of waterproofing cracks as it settles. I have to fix it with the most precise tool. Then I use a plaster fiberglass mesh 1 meter wide with a 5x5mm grid. I cut a piece 5 meters long and trim the width down to about 70 centimeters. I make 20 centimeter strips kind of like a fringe. I position the mesh beneath the future baptismal font. I trace around it and cut it out, leaving about the thickness of the wall. Let me remind you, it's only 3 centimeters thick. I mixed the adhesive compound used for plastering foam plastic, Penoplex, and mineral wool insulation. The fringe is needed to extend the reinforcement onto the bottom, creating a continuous reinforcing layer. I haven't studied strength of materials, but I know a cylinder is stronger than a parallel piped, so a round tub will be stronger than a rectangular one. Its curved shape allows stress to be distributed evenly across the entire surface when force is applied. In a mini pool tub shaped like a parallel piped, the stress would be concentrated in the corners and edges. With the same load on the same material, the stress in a cylinder will be significantly lower, which makes it more resistant to deformation and destruction. That's exactly why I chose the round shape without hesitation. But I also reinforce it carefully with mesh. When I applied waterproofing to seal the seams, I didn't really believe I would be able to get a completely watertight container right away, but I really wanted to test it. This is only half the plunge pool's height so far. The sides will be built up, creating new seams that will need sealing. That's why I only reinforce the inside up to a certain height for now. The plunge pool has become noticeably heavier. To prevent breaking the fragile, unreinforced edge, we carefully turn it over, avoiding pressure on the edge. We lift it slightly, actually not forward, but like this. Lock the backside. Thank you. I'm sealing the seams outside. I'm cutting a strip of mesh 5 meters and 20 centimeters long, since the outer circumference is longer than the inner one. I don't trim the fringe along the width, I make it just a bit less wide, about 45 centimeters. Plastering and reinforcing the surface with fiberglass mesh is a fascinating process. Both Natalia and my younger son German mentioned this in one of the recent videos on the Yasha Koshak Songs channel. He easily managed to build the utility block. By the way, the utility block is now made of 90% regular white foam, not extruded polystyrene foam, which means the technology is getting even cheaper since white foam is less expensive. We are not standing still. And here my work is similar to that of a potter, but in traditional pottery the piece spins while the potter stands still. In my case, it's the opposite. Life makes me spin. I apply the adhesive with a trowel and a medium spatula. For leveling the surface, a wide spatula works perfectly. The next key point is preparing the base. In the previous video, I didn't emphasize this much, so I want to draw your special attention to it now. Natalia had a crack appear where the bottom and sides meet, most likely because of a weak or uneven base. In hot weather, the thin reinforcing layer dries fast. Keep it moist. Even this compact plunge pool mini pool will have a volume of 2 cubic meters, and 2 cubic meters of water is exactly 2 tons plus the pool itself. That's more than 2 tons in total. That's a serious weight. And if one side suddenly starts to sink unevenly, there's a high risk of damaging even the most reliable building materials. In this case, even a concrete pool can crack. That's why I remove the fertile layer of soil and fill it with river sand. Without being lazy, I thoroughly soak it for compaction and carefully tamp down the sand base. I also try to make the leveled sand surface as horizontal as possible. The mini pool has become noticeably heavier, and the risk of breaking the unprotected edge of the rim during flipping is even greater now. But everything turned out fine. Because of the rapidly increasing weight of the vessel, it was decided to transport it to the installation site. Working under the canopy was convenient, but moving it with the pool walls at full height could be very hard. There's another advantage to the round shape. I believe that it was the invention of the wheel by our ancestors that led to what we have now. In pre-wheel times, people lived slowly in complete harmony with nature. There was enough game and plants for everyone. Earth was simply a paradise. The invented wheels started spinning, greed appeared, the thirst for profit, wage labor, the mania to conquer new territories and enslave wheelless peoples. Sometimes I notice one gardener working for another. I completely understand that it's not because of poverty, it's just a form of protest, since both power tillers and tractors operate using wheels. I'm starting to build the second level of the plunge pool. It will double its volume. For temporary fixes, I use self-tapping screws without hesitation. The holes are easy to seal since they're near the seams. The round shape still isn't perfect enough, so I installed temporary spacers to correct the round form. When the waterproofing dried, I applied the reinforcing layer all the way to the top. Honestly, I didn't really believe that I could make a watertight container right away just by relying on the properties of extruded polystyrene to keep water out. I had more hope that the container would be strong enough to hold water. As an intuitive structural analyst, I know that extruded polystyrene reinforced on both sides becomes a composite material, functioning like a sandwich panel. If the tub holds water but leaks slightly, I'll consider extra interior waterproofing. If it leaks a lot, I'll order a polyvinyl chloride liner for the inside. However, using such a liner will greatly raise costs, as a custom-made polyvinyl chloride liner is much more expensive than the materials I've used before. I'm using the cheapest tile adhesive for the pool's exterior finish. I'm applying the adhesive evenly. I wait a few hours and then use a piece of bent wire to carve the joints between the improvised stones. The main thing here is not to miss the right moment. If the glue sets, this kind of work will take much more effort. Working with fresh glue is a real pleasure. We picked the simplest finish, though options are endless. I continue reinforcing from the inside as well. This time, my wife and daughter were in charge of the color palette. I just coated the outer surface with acrylic tinted stone varnish. To finish the edge of the side, I used scraps of 50mm diameter sewer pipe. Later, a Yasha Koshak Songs channel subscriber suggested soft pipe insulation would also work. That's a great idea, thank you. Ideally, let the tub fully set for at least a couple of weeks. But I can't wait, so I fill it with water after just a couple of days. We start bathing, everything is great. About a week later, some noticeable spots started to appear. They don't feel wet to the touch, and the water isn't leaking from the tub. I measured the water level drop over a week, only 1 or 2 centimeters, likely due to natural evaporation. In the 3rd season of use, everything is still great, only the spots have gotten a bit bigger. But I think they even add some extra naturalness, don't they? I didn't paint or cover the inside of the tub with mosaic on purpose, since this is an experiment. And I keep observing the surface. If you plan to repeat this, I recommend making an additional screed at the bottom. The ladder I used to get out leaves dents. The tightness was not compromised. Give a big thumbs up. Subscribe to Yasha Koshak Songs, Ruta, the VK Group, TikTok, and Zen. Links are below the video. Also hit the bell so you'll definitely get notified. Yes, let there be peace all over the world. Thank you.